So our favorite, or one of our favorite aim coaches, Minigod, has released a weekly Tac FPS routine. And the timing is pretty fitting, I feel like, because as we discussed on a recent video, the most impactful skills with regards to your mechanics tend to be, the flicking type of skills. And, I made the video saying, okay, micro corrections, click timing, these are, perhaps some of the most impactful skills because they are the things that really convert into kills most frequently in the game. And so, Minigod, he just released this playlist, and it is, of course, something that is heavily flick based. And so we're going to go through the playlist, and I'm completely cold. So I'm probably going to embarrass myself, and I haven't been training very much lately because I've been just trying to make content and other things in life. But here we go. We've got the post where Minigod announces this, and I think it was about a few days ago, 4, 5, 6 days ago that he announced this. And you can see, he's introducing the weekly Tac FPS routines. These are in Aim Labs, so that's where it's currently available. And as you can see, the first one focuses on flicks and click timing efficiency. My goal is to post one each week. And so, yeah, you're going to be getting another one of these. And I'll also do a video on the next one too. So we'll keep it going. And you've got the direct link here, as well as the workshop link. But I think the direct link, at least for me, is a little bit easier. So I'm showing it in action. Oh, an aim credit. What does it mean? Okay, so wait, is it working? Oh, it's working. All right, we're straight into the playlist. So we'll go through some of these tasks, and I will sort of just talk about, what the tasks are training and sort of how you execute the tasks, sort of my feelings doing it, and we'll sort of, obviously do my playthroughs through each task. And I imagine I'll probably end up cutting this down a little bit to kind of remove some of the fluff, as you guys don't need to see me doing entire tasks, just, sitting there silently. But we should be able to get a good idea as to, what this playlist is for and how it feels. Now, I'm someone, just to go over my settings quickly, who has a very fast sensitivity, 26 cm, which is definitely not recommended for Valorant, I would say. And if again, I've said this a bunch of times, if I was gonna play Valorant seriously, and actually try to, try to be like a legit player that's playing at the top tier and like the Radiant level, like if I really wanted to shoot for that, I would most likely put my settings up to at least like 34, which is almost a 10 cm increase, which is basically like a 50% increase as to what I'm using currently. And the reason is because flicking and static becomes generally a lot easier to control. So for now, though, I'll be sticking to my usual sends. We've got the Tiger Ice dot skates on the mouse, and we have we've got the bigger camera. Let's throw it up here. So we got, is that dirt? Oh man, my shame. You can see all the dirt on the bottom of the mouse. Lovely. I've had this mouse. Is that a hair on the sensor? Man, I blame the cats. Oh my god, there's a hair on the sensor, guys. I mean, it doesn't seem to be like causing any problems, but it's like, can you see? Like, there's like a... Can't focus. Don't know if you can like quite make it out. There's like a hair. Yeah, you can kind of see it. There's like a hair going directly across the sensor, it feels like. Anyway, it doesn't seem to be doing anything, and I have tweezers right here. Okay, let's do the surgery, shall we? Get rid of this hair. There we go. Look at that. Oh, it's never going to focus, is it? Oh, hang on. Maybe like this. Yeah, there you go. Oh, there you go. That is a cat hair. And that is not the only cat hair in this. Guys, I didn't expect the video to go like this, I must admit. But okay, we've taken care of most of these. How is there so many? Christ. Oh my god, there's so much in here. That's unbelievable. There's so much. I just don't understand. Well, I kind of do understand. If any of you have cats, especially long-haired cats, it's just impossible. Your life becomes pretty difficult when it comes to just dealing with the amount of hair that gets everywhere. Okay, so it looks like I've gotten rid of all of it now. so cool. I'm glad I did this like little close-up for you guys just to show you the skates. But these are the Tiger Ice skates, so they're pretty quick on the old on the old pad. So we will get to playing the tasks now. Okay. So task number 1 is Pokeball wide small. So this is a particularly interesting one for me because with these like wider flicks, I can go between wrist for it, or I can try to actually just use my arm. And generally speaking, I would probably prefer to use the arm for these kinds of flicks, just because I want to kind of work on arm control on these like larger flicks. And a large part of the reason is because my arm is like still pretty underdeveloped. You know, I've got like 20 years of just like basically being a wrist and fingertip exclusive player. So my arm flicks are just not as quality at all, but I need to make them that way because that will give me sort of the versatility to be able to use my wrist and fingertips in more advantageous positions when necessary. So this is just, you know, your wide wall, so you get those big flicks with the microcorrects. And I like this a lot because obviously, you know, you're going to be having to make these big flicks quite often. Like, you know, you flick to focus on an angle and then you make a small adjustment. And you can see also, you know, something that I notice is my lines are just not clean. It just speaks to the inefficiency of my arm movements. So if I was to like sort of analyze sort of my performance there, I could make note of a few different things. Can I actually see my replay? Because that would be kind of cool as I kind of talk about it. So normally you'd be able to actually play your replay for this, but maybe it's just of your high score. I don't know. Either way, it's going to be the high score. So, oh no, this is the one we just did. Okay, so let's have a look at it real quick. So you can see the lines, and this is something helpful that you see from replays. The lines aren't super efficient. They're okay, honestly. You know, they're kind of okay, but you see some of these like bigger overflicks as well. Usually these overflicks will happen, I think, for me, because of, let's say, you know, my arm not being super trained. I need to sort of apply more focus on where my next target is that I'm going to be flicking to, because this is how you also get fast. Is you need to, so I'm dealing with this, I'm micro correcting, but in my brain I'm already kind of taking care of this movement. I know where the target is. I've moved down to it. I'm micro correcting. I'm sort of allowing my brain to sort of, you know, just all the execution to kind of happen, that kind of system 2 kind of execution. But then sort of like consciously, I'm thinking, okay, what is my next target? So it might be that your movement reading, in this case, the targets are static, and I'm you know, be focusing on this one. And so I'm sort of almost visualizing shooting this target as I'm micro correcting into this one. And then that should help you to have a generally like more effective flick ultimately. That because your brain is already understanding what it needs to do right before you've actually done it. So you know, and so that also like cuts out some of the downtime between targets. Because if I was to shoot a target and then sort of think, okay, where am I going next? I'm sort of making things a little bit too slow, if that makes sense. So a few things to work on for me is making sure I'm really focusing on that, making sure the lines are clean, and that initial flick is good, because that's my arm, where my arm's getting most involved there, and I really need to, like, personally, that's what I would isolate more still, so that first flick can be cleaner. Okay, so let's see, what is this task? Okay, so this task is, okay, so it's about, okay, so hang on, how does this work? Okay, right. So you have to shoot orbs at the same. Okay, so the yellow ones are the ones you want to shoot. Weird. It's like. So yeah. Oh, I think it's kind of bugged. This task seems actually kind of bugged, I think, maybe, because it's when my mouse goes over this, it's just actually just firing, and I'm not even pressing fire. So I don't know, something just kind of feels bugged. But from what I can tell, you're supposed to shoot the yellow ones. So you're getting a bit of tracking, and then like a little flick is what you're kind of looking for. And you need to definitely focus on having that kind of soft landing, because you need to have that control to track right away, that tiny target, and then you do that little micro correction. So a lot of this one is about the precision flick, and then sort of that tension management, so you can kind of like track. And you can see my bigger flicks, I'm still doing that same kind of movement of that like flick micro correct. It's the reason why it's so important. We talk about how important it is, because yeah, it's great if you always land on the target, but you know, that's less likely to happen. The most likely thing to happen, I would assume statistically, without seeing the data, I'm going to make this statement, is that it will be the case that you will flick to a target and you'll probably miss. And so obviously that having it habituated that I flick, but then I microcorrect, and my first flick is always going to be pretty damn close. And so if I have a high quality microcorrect, I'm going to be in like a really good spot to be very consistently killing my target no matter what the outcome is. Because there's effectively two outcomes when you make a flick. You either land on the target or you don't land on the target. Those are the two outcomes that can happen. So if you don't land on the target, now you've got a technique that is essentially understanding that is, you know, part of what could happen, and then you've got the micro correction to correct. So by training that part of the technique and being very fast and comfortable, you still get a high quality performance and you still get to kill the target within those two movements. If you're enjoying just hearing my thoughts on the aiming processes and about optimizing performance, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because we've got so much more coming on the channel and more of these playlists as well. Let's get back into it. Okay, so this one is, okay, we've got targets coming at us. So we've got movement reading here. This is going to be click timing, and you can see that it's a more lateral plane. So this is obviously generally tends to be more useful when we're talking about Tac FPS movements, because, you know, we're not having to kind of vertically adjust too much. It's about movement reading, and so you're getting that predictive flick. So you're trying to flick in front of the target, and there's that kind of like slight pressure element because they're going to disappear. They're coming at you. They're getting bigger, and you have to kind of do target prioritization to try to like kill the ones that are bigger first. And you can probably see on the mouse cam for me that, you know, I'm doing a lot of fingertip work here because that's kind of sort of where I'm going to perform the best. And so that's kind of like what ends up happening by default for me. But still the same technique applies where, you know, do that predictive flick. If I'm going to be off, then I'm going to have to do the micro correct. But hopefully the predictive flick is going to be easier to know where to flick the cursor or the crosshair, because I'm doing my movement reading. So with my movement reading, I'm able to see, okay, it's going in this direction. And so I get my crosshair ahead, and then it's all about the click timing. I mean, we're trying to like habituate that feeling of, okay, when is it actually going behind my crosshair? And I'm going to click at that timing. And so even though it kind of just looks like I'm just flicking, I'm still also trying to focus on making sure that, okay, I'm looking to see how far ahead of the target my crosshair has landed. And then I try to get that feeling of the timing for the click, as opposed to just flicking and clicking, essentially. So it's, you know, it may sound like there's a negligible difference there, but it's just like, for me mentally, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so we've got targets that are... okay, so we've got the movement reading again. Wait, are they going through? Yeah, they are. They're going all the way through. So it's, again, like a very similar click timing situation. And you want to try to like not spam here. This is actually kind of a challenging one, because you don't get much time to react. That's the thing with this one. Okay, let's actually do a run. Again, you're trying to not track the targets. You want to really try to... This is about like the predictive flick and then the click timing. These ones seem a bit tricky because the reaction, because they're very small, and then you have to react very quickly. And you can see I'm missing on my click timing here. I'm actually just missing my shots quite a bit. So in these tasks, sometimes, you know, some tasks can be trickier than others in terms of like getting used to the way that things move. So sometimes like some tasks require a little bit of practice to get kind of comfortable with how things move before you can really start kind of executing and dialing in the technique. And that's totally fine. You know, I would not worry about that. That's, you know, it doesn't really, that practice element doesn't really take away from too much, because as soon as you get used to it, you know, you'll be able to kind of, you know, just get the most out of the task. And, you know, that's just kind of how it is sometimes. So you can see I'm trying my best to flick ahead of the target and click, because that's what I'm trying to train with that particular one. So it's reacting, and then still kind of reacting very quickly, getting the crosser in the right position, reading the movement of the target, and then trying to get that click timing working in my favor. So a little bit challenging, that one for sure, I would say. So what do we have here? So this... Okay, so this is... Okay, right. So this task is going to be all about, you make that flick, and then you need, again, to have that good tension management so that when you land on the target, you're able to fluidly track. And so this is something that could be easier or harder depending on your sensitivity, your friction, and these types of things. Because the tracking is quite precise in this one. And what might be kind of weird for tac shooter players is the verticality on some of the on some of the flicks. But it's obviously like very good to have well-rounded training, even if you don't use some of the skills as much. That feeling of competency that you gather from training in a variety of ways, even if it's not as kind of commonly, you're not commonly encountering situations where you do this type of movement, it still gives you a feeling of competency that improves over time, or rather that kind of makes you feel more confident because you just feel like you can handle more stuff. And you've seen the improvement, so it's kind of like this confirmation as you work on this stuff that you're getting better, like you're a better player. It's like confirmation of that. So I think that adds to that confidence level quite nicely. So yeah, that one is I think actually quite nice because you have to get that feeling for the flick, the soft landing, so that you have that fluid control. I'm trying to go through each task just like one at a time here. This is all my first impressions. I think I'm sure there's more insights that I could probably garner for if I spent more time on the tasks, but we're trying to just kind of get this introduction of this playlist. Okay, so what do we have here? So we've got targets moving just laterally, predictably, and okay, so this is 2 clicks. This is like kind of like ghost practice kind of, or like just tapping targets that are kind of strafing. So it's the same kind of principle in terms of flick, microcorrect. There's movement reading as well. You got to read the kind of the direction that they're going, and there's like two different ways to do this. I think that what you want to do is you do actually want to do the tracking because that's kind of what you'll end up doing in the game. But it's about that click timing. So that second movement, don't take it for granted. Or that second shot, don't take it for granted. Like confirm that your crosshair is actually in the right place, because you are going to be tracking. You flick, you have that tension management under control, so you're able to kind of fluidly move the mouse and follow the target, even if it's tiny. And then you make sure that you click. You don't have to rush things. You can see my accuracy is actually terrible because I think you should really be able to have above 95 without probably too much of an issue. But that's the click timing task. Click timing tasks, definitely you're really indexing for like really high accuracy. Again, we really don't want to allow ourselves to miss. And this is something I can't really hammer home enough, because as you improve this technique with your click timing, what you'll find that because everything does move comparatively speaking, compared to harder tasks in something like Aimlabs or Kovacs, the models in the game, the enemy models, will be moving slower than what the movement that you'll be kind of dealing with in a lot of these aim trainers. So if you get really good at the technique with faster moving objects, when you go into Valorant and you've really habituated that click timing, you've got that feeling of like you'll be able to take your time on your shots, and you'll be able to confirm more shots, basically, which means you'll be able to hit more shots more consistently and reliably. So it does matter that we really do try to like be conscious of that click. And the reason I say this is because it's very easy to spam, and that's not necessary. You're not necessarily getting the full effect out of the training if you're doing something like that. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Okay, so we got an initial target, and then we got a flick reaction. So there's the flick, there's a reaction. And again, this is a click timing situation with the microcorrect, where it's a reactive microcorrect. You got to read the movement, you got to get ahead of the target, and then click it. And you can see this is actually very hard. I'm struggling on this one right now. Because again, I'm just clicking once, because I get one shot for the click timing here. So the interesting thing here is that the click timing has to come off from like the movement read where there's a microcorrect, because it's not like a very big movement that you have to flick. So you can see I'm missing most of these. So this is going to require a lot of practice for me. Again, my very fast sends does make these ones very difficult for me. And this is why, by the way, I talk about how your setup can make sense in terms of like either making the skills that are most used easier or harder. So with a high sends, like if I'm having to do these skills all the time, I'm definitely making my life harder than if I was playing on a slower sense where these types of movements are easier. Okay, so I can see I'm really punished for my misses here because I hit so few of those targets on the click timing portion of this task. But this is a really cool task because of that reactive click timing element. So you can see that with this playlist, Minigod is really building in a lot of these kind of skills in combination. So let's see what we've got in this one. So okay, so this is just one click. Okay, so because the targets are sliding around a little bit, what you've got here is a situation where again the hit confirm is so important, and it's something whereby you may flick, but because it's moving, it's going to be going off of your crosshair most likely. So if not a micro correct, it's definitely going to be click timing situation because you may land here and just for a second it's still on the crosshair. So we are still thinking about that click timing element. So again, high accuracy, confirm every shot. In some cases you might of course like make a mistake in terms of the movement reading and you might misclick, but let's try to be very mindful of exactly what the targets are doing and confirm every single shot as best we can. And again, these are the things that will really pay off in game because again, you actually have often a lot more time to aim than you think, and we end up rushing ourselves a lot. But if you have a very high level technique, with high level technique, speed increases because as you get better at a technique, you are able to then go faster. However, you are limited in your speed based off of the efficiency and quality of the technique. So, because any technique can be sped up, but if your quality of that technique and sort of how habituated it is not super efficient, you'll be kind of capped on how fast you can reliably execute that technique. So if you really focus on really dialing in the technique as cleanly as possible, you'll get really fast because your technique is so efficient and clean. And actually, efficiency was one of the words that Minigod actually did use when talking about how he, like what he was designing this playlist for Tac FPS players. So, okay, so let's see what do we have here. So we've got a similar situation. There's more movement from the targets. Oh, okay, so they get health back, and you've got to sort of like hold mouse 1 on them. Okay, so you're really punished here for flicking off at the wrong time. So again, this is very much confirmation. So you can see the same skills. Flick, micro correct, try to like manage that tension so that we can kind of fluidly track the target after we get onto it. And then we need to make sure that we actually also, again, make sure that we actually kill the targets before flicking onto the next one because we'll get punished because they'll heal, and that actually reduces the time that we are able to shoot other targets, therefore reducing our score, so we're punished for worse technique. So for me right now, this is all wrist and fingertips because, again, that's kind of just my style that gives me the most control. And you can see that initial flick, you're focusing on that. As always with the initial flick, the snappiness is important because we want to get to the target as quickly as possible. All right, so that felt pretty decent. Another great task again, because what we're doing through this playlist is we're focusing on different parts of the technique, and we're focusing on really making sure that we're getting we're getting like these versatile situations where there's a lot of we're getting variance in the scenarios in which we're applying these techniques. So okay, this one is another click timing one, I assume. Okay, so this is similar in that you have to actually kind of mouse 1 on the targets, but we get much more lateral movement again, which is much more similar. But you can see that in this case, again, instead of clicking, because it's kind of like holding mouse 1, you're in a situation where you actually will be tracking the targets as you flick to them. So we're not doing flick micro correct as much. Obviously, you might have to if you're off, but we're trying to get that crosshair ahead of the target once again. And that's going to be like really the most consistent way to sort of approach a task like this. And again, it just allows you to get that focus on, again, your sort of tension control when we're thinking about these smaller motions. these smaller flicks. Because a lot of these other ones were, you know, we're dealing with like bigger boards and we're dealing with bigger flicks and more micro corrects, but this one kind of isolates that lateral movement a little bit more. Something else that I'll say with this one is, you know, what am I focusing on? We're focusing on, you know, getting our crosshair ahead of the target. Usually with tasks like this, you do kind of, if you can, you want to try to stay away from the edges, just because, you know, the target's going to bounce and it just can kind of like really mess up your flow. So if you have the option to avoid the edges, it can be nicer in terms of, you allow the task to just to be more flowy, because you're not kind of having these movements that are awkward in random intervals. And so, you know, arguably you'd be able to get a higher quality run if you're not having to deal with that. You know, you could obviously make the argument that, hey, you know, you should be training that because it's, you know, if it's hard, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. But ultimately, all we really care about is enforcing high quality technique. That's all we really care about. Okay, so vibe shot chaining. Okay, so chaining normally is about, we want to be able to kind of boom, boom, boom. That's kind of that skill. Now, this is something that in aim trainers, I'm not very good at. It's not something I've trained really a lot. So when I mean like boom, 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 it's like flick to this, boom, boom, boom. That's kind of usually when we're talking about chaining, is you're getting a bunch of easy micro corrects and you want to go, you want to like try to like just smash them like in super fast succession. So it's an increase of pacing on the shots that goes outside your average pacing because of how easy it is to shoot those targets because they're right next to each other. And so obviously in game, these situations exist where you'll have maybe like 3 targets, like, because maybe it's a trigger discipline moment. There's 3 targets that ran past you and you know what all of them are. And the difficulty of the shots is very low, but what you need is speed. So you need to go boom, 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 you know, so that's kind of that in aim training, there's these chaining scenarios. Like I believe in the Voltaic daily improvement method, you can also find tasks like that LG56 that put in there. Okay, so let's try to see what we can do with this. So again, we've got the same situation where, again, you know, don't be afraid to take your time on this. We want to hit confirm. We're using all of the skills we talked about already. Got a few misses there. And you can see that I'm slightly off because they're just moving out of my way. So again, it puts a lot of confirmation, or rather a lot of focus on that confirmation of where is my crosshair? Is my crosshair on target or off target? And the whole chaining thing makes me think that you should be able to do this pretty fast. But again, as I mentioned, sometimes, you know, practice is helpful. Obviously, I am not Bardos. I am not Minigods. You know, these like static flicking goals or Cartoon, for example. I'm going to do a video on Cartoon actually because he had this clip where he was doing like insane scores on static, on like a sends that is comparable to mine on like a surface that is also comparable to mine as well. So super fast sends, but the control that he had is, I feel like, is unprecedented for that sends. So that's something I'm going to go over in a future video. I decided today. So we're nearing the end of the playlist at this point. What do we have? Okay, so we've got another task where we've got these like tiny little movements. So Minigods are really, I think, really making sure that of a few things with this kind of movement on these targets. We get a good snappy flick. When we get to the micro correct, you know, we've decreased the tension, so we have a lot of control. With the hit confirm element, like really being conscious as to whether we're on target or not, we then get the ability with that, you know, reduced tension to have more control to then hit the target and to continually assess whether we're on target or not. And so we get that challenge because we have to really focus on our crosshair and whether the target is actually behind our crosshair or not when we click. So you really want to focus on like accuracy in terms of am I on target or not? Because that is the whole point. Because what are we caring about in Tac FPS? Hitting the first bullet. Hitting the first bullet in Tac FPS is extremely impactful. It is the game where hitting the first bullet is probably the most important. So sometimes, yeah, you do need to take your time a little bit because yeah, the target might be spamming AD, and you know, you might have some time to kind of take the shot. The thing is, like, you have as much time as you need, because if let's say you flick immediately and you feel like, oh, I got to shoot straight away. Well, if you're going to shoot straight away, but it's going to be a miss because of how your, you know, where your crosshair landed, which is it, you know, it doesn't matter like how good you are. Your even if you're, you know, Demon 1 or whatever, like your crosshair is not always going to be on straight away. But the thing is that if you're able to know that it's not on straight away, you can microcorrect. And if you can know that the microcorrect is off, you can adjust again. It doesn't make any difference as to how fast you need to shoot, because it's about how fast can you shoot and hit with the first bullet. Now, obviously, there are cases where you can, and I think this is why we have some of these tasks where we have the tracking. In fact, we're at the end of the task here now, so let's or the playlist. So I'm just going to go back in the wait, can I not go back in the playlist? So I'm going to reload the playlist real quick and jump into one of these tasks, just to be able to like show you at the same time that like there are these moments where when you're like, let's say, spraying, you're going to be counting on the first like 2 bullets, or rather the first 3 bullets, actually being able to still connect with the target, even if there's a little bit of inaccuracy because of the recoil. You're going to still be looking to do that. So I'm just booted up the playlist again here, and let's see, where were some of those tracking ones? I actually forget like which was the, I think maybe this one, adjust shot. We'll see. Not really, but but there are those ones where you have to like flick and then you have to track. I wasn't sort of paying attention to all the names, and so when you're doing that, the flick and then the tracking, that's so when you're like shooting the Vandal and you're like, okay, I missed the first bullet. I thought it was gonna hit, but I'm still tracking the opponent's movements with my crosshair. So if I continue to shoot those extra 2 bullets, one of those 2 bullets will probably still hit them in the head. And I'm sure for those of you that have played Tac FPS, like you really, you understand like precisely like what I'm talking about. So with all this said, I think the playlist is pretty awesome. I'm excited for next week's edition, which will probably be coming out relatively soon because I wasn't super quick on making this video. So keep your eyes peeled for that. You can follow Minigod on Twitter to get the updates at MinigodCS. So make sure that you check that out so you don't miss any of those key updates for those, for the playlists. And again, this is weekly Tac FPS. So I'm curious what he's going to come up with next, because again, we saw the skills that he focused on this week. I would expect that he's going to focus on some other stuff next week, maybe some similar stuff, because there's only so much with regards to flicking technique that exists, and we covered quite a lot in this very playlist. So very curious. And Minigod is someone that's really studied how to best design playlists, either for technique work or for warm-up. So, and he's got some really great, a really great warm-up playlist as well. It's called the Ramp Warm-Up, which I can kind of go into actually on another video perhaps. But with that said, thank you everybody for watching this video. It's been a blast as always, and I will catch you on the next one. Thank you.